Okay, this is Bruce Anderson. We're going to talk about spiral dynamics today, and there are five guys here to have the conversation. We're all from Texas. We're in our 70s and 80s, and we thought it would be interesting to use spiral dynamics as a way of understanding our political climate, both domestically and maybe even internationally. So I want to warn you initially that this presentation might contain explicit content, which might pretty dramatically alter the way you view the world. Now, there are even cases where others come to better understand people with whom they disagree with and even hate. We don't expect you to change your mind here, but we hope to give you some additional way of thinking about things that might be helpful. So spiral dynamics is a model of a value system that represents our history all the way from the very beginning of mankind. And you'll understand this as we go through this. There are 8 stages in the spiral of development. And what we plan to do initially is to go through these stages and have a conversation about it, and then have a conversation about what that means from a current standpoint. So initially, let me just say that it was developed by a fellow by the name of Carl Graves in the 70s and carried on by Don Beck and Chris Cowan, who wrote a book called Spiral Dynamics. And basically, it's a model that explains the complexity of human nature and our global diversity and what drives evolutionary change and how we see the world, how others see the world, and how we think about things. So we think about things differently now than perhaps we did when we were 16. I doubt very much that any of us are thinking the same way now as we did when we were 16. And at the same time, when we were 16, we didn't know what it was like to be older. And so there's a shift in our perspectives as we move through life, and there's a shift in perspective from a cultural standpoint as well. So it describes you and others responding to how you respond to motivational stimuli, and really how values arise and how they're spread. So that gives you kind of an initial general understanding from a definition. It will become a little more clear as we go through this. So initially, I'm gonna have you look at the left side of the screen, and you'll see that there are a total of 8 means. Now, we're gonna go into detail about these, so don't worry too much about what all this means at this point, but just understand that these value systems began in early man and developed over a period of literally thousands of years. Some of these have only been developed over the last 150 years or even 20 years. And we'll explain that as we go. A couple of things we want to understand about this, and I'm going to read this on the left, on the right, so you have an appreciation for it. So as a new worldview emerges, the previously awakened understanding doesn't disappear. Rather, it remains subsumed in the total flow and not only adds texture to more complex ways of living and thinking, but remain on call in case to solve problems. So there's systems within us, miniature worldviews, each of which is calibrated for different problems of existence, like Russian dolls. There's systems within systems within systems within systems. And I'm going to ask my colleagues to comment once I finish these next 2 things. The means, when we start at the beginning, it's individual, and then the next mean, purple, is collective, and then the next meme is individual, and then collective, and so forth. And that'll become more apparent as we go through them. And the thing that's fascinating about this is that when you're at a particular perspective, a particular meme level, you look at things and you think that's the right way to look at things. And you either don't get the other levels, or you dismiss them and even berate them. So we're kind of locked into a particular perspective until we get out of that perspective at the next level and we can look back and see that we were locked into it at some level. So with that, is there any observations you guys might want to make initially about this? Not hearing anything. Okay, so let me
I'd make one observation.
go for it.
And the observation is, as a person progresses to one level worldview, and you left some things behind, it's circumstantial. You toss a pandemic in the mix and a lot of anxiety and fear, and what you do is revert to you go backwards and lock in, and all of your actions and behaviors are informed by a lesser worldview. It's not, it's like, it's fluid depending on circumstances.
Absolutely, that's excellent, Joe. It's very good. And realize that we have kind of have a center of gravity at a particular mean level. It doesn't mean that we're not aware of and cognizant of the other means. And again, that will be a little clearer as we proceed through this. Any other observations?
Well, I mean, just related to what Joe says, I mean, I think a lot of our political dialogue is fear-based, I think, with a goal of causing people to regress to some more of a survival approach to life, and with an intention of generating a certain response.
Yeah, now that I wouldn't say that that's necessarily, we're looking at somebody's particular perspective being motivating them to put other people into fear. And I'm not sure whether that is, it might very well do that, but I'm not sure whether that's their goal or their intent.
You got to be kidding me.
Well,
okay.
the other thing to take into account is fear is contagious, and if everybody is challenged by something like a pandemic, then to attribute that's naturing, and it's contagious, and it looks really not pretty.
Yes.
It's not like
and
somebody's
Tom,
orchestrating it.
Right, exactly. And Tom, if you and you're saying I got to be kidding, I might be wrong on this, and that's fine. As we proceed through this, let's peel that back.
Okay.
Okay, good. So these are these three things: transcend and include, individual and collective, and then everybody thinks they're right is the key points here. So I'm going to go to the first two. And that includes the beige meme, which is the very survivalist, started 100,000 years ago, where humans came out of the savannah or went the savannah and basically were operating on instincts for survival. And there were mystical beliefs and spirits and allegiance to chiefs and elders in the purple meme. And the survival meme, it was just basically living off the land, much as other animals do. And it wasn't until 50,000 years ago that this purple arose. It's more kind of a magical place, alive with spirits and mystical signs. That's the earth and environment being that way. And in this case, the individual is subsumed to a group in the sense that they're chiefs and elders and the clan, if you will. Now, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this because we're beyond that now, but it is the beginning of the first two stages of development. And with that, we're going to go to the next stage, which is beyond purple, which is the red stage. And that started about 10,000 years ago, when the basic idea was that you have to be strong and cunning to survive. It breaks free from the domination or restraint to please self and others. You're standing tall. It's a very much of a fighting kind of egocentric kind of mentality. You know, conquer, might makes right, dominate, and so forth. Now, for each one of these, there are some positives and negatives. So, for instance, courage, creativity, development of separateness of ego, a sense of personal power, being able to set boundaries are some of the gifts, and the ability of the leader to defend himself and their tribe is him or herself and their tribe is certainly very important. Now, the weaknesses and the challenges, of course, is that there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of bloodshed. The mentality is power, feeling of shame, not guilt. And there's graft in government and business. When we move back into a red stage, we're talking about moving into more of a dictatorial kind of mode. And one of the things I mentioned here was on the slide, which I think is really interesting, is that as a dictator, dictators do not follow the rules, they make the rules. And that's a misspelling there, but they don't follow the rules, they make the rules. And I think that's an important distinction when you look at other kinds of leadership. So we have talking about some of the iconic brutal dictators, focusing on this red meme. Blue, and what happens is that the chaos reigns under the red, and then at some point there's a movement toward an ordered existence. We're under control of some sort of ultimate truth, and it's where the cities became bigger. Under red, they were feudal cities, but the cities became bigger. There's more of a code of conduct. There was the whole idea of laws. It's a mentality and a perspective that is oriented toward the group, and it's oriented toward structure and stability. You notice it forces a code of conduct with absolute principles. And the blue can show up in terms of patriotism, which is very positive. It can show up in terms of religious, various kinds of religious belief systems. It basically creates order out of chaos of the red. And generally there's a rule book. So we have laws, systems, armies, monarchies. At their best, these groups can be quite efficient and strong leadership, and can be have clear procedures. Now, the challenge here, of course, is that there's this one way of thinking. You know, it's my way, or something. You're wrong. It's demonizing out groups. Blues have enemies, right? Infidels, heathens, pagans, witches are.
I don't understand why there need to be out groups, Bruce. Can you say more about that? Why does it have to be patriarchal? Why does the rule that's selected have to be patriarchal or discriminatory?
Well, I don't think it necessarily does. I think they're positive aspects of the blue, certainly from being a nationalist, being patriotic, having a strong faith and a belief. If you can make judgments about someone with a strong faith dehumanizing or having apostates and killing heathens or witches and so forth. But it's not necessarily that way. That's just the negative side.
Bruce, you mentioned it's the not me attitude. So if I have a blue worldview, I'm right, and everybody that's not blue is wrong, whether it's higher level or lower level. That's
Uh, well,
that's the out group.
yeah,
The,
but
the
the
orange
outgroup,
is an out group of blue, just like
that's
the beige is an out group.
uh, yeah, that's one way of looking at it. The other aspect of it is that if you're in a blue meme around a particular religion, you can be against another religion that is also in the blue meme. So that's where you get the infidels and the heathens. In other words, if you have, Christians
Right.
and Muslims are both blue, they fit that criteria, but they demonize each other because there's a need, I think, in the blue. Certainly, there's an ethnocentric need in a human kind of dynamic of being superior around your particular beliefs.
So
My country is better than your country. My religion is better than your religion. My way of thinking is pristine where yours is flawed.
so a way to summarize that up, anybody that's not like me is an enemy. I'm better than, I'm right. Me and my tribe are right, and the others are out groups, no matter which
In,
level you're in.
uh, well, let's explore that further as we look at the other levels. I'm not sure that's completely accurate, but there certainly is this we they kind of mentality, and there's a we they all the way up and down the spiral at some level. So let's move on to the next meme, which is orange. Now, what happened historically was that we had this authoritarian, purposeful kind of way of thinking where all knowledge came from authority, and then we have the Enlightenment, and the Enlightenment comes around about 300 years ago, and here again, this is an individualistic kind of perspective where there's an advancement of scientific understanding. There's a focus on self-reliance. People have their own authority. The authority is not necessarily given to absolutely to other to authorities. I mean, it's more of a self-sufficient, independent, individualistic kind of mentality. And here we come up into the marketplace. We come up into the focus on material goods, individual rights, belief in what we believe, beginning world-centric thinking. Strive, thrive is really a very good term. It's a desire to improve, achieve within agreed rules set by blue. Civil right of individuals. This is where democratic institutions came from. This is where capitalism came from. So industrialization begins to create equal opportunities for women, and we have multi-party democracy. And of course, we have this huge profit motive that explodes innovation, but there's certainly some negatives to this. And the negatives include this focus almost exclusively on scientism. We kind of make God out of, science into a God and ignoring everything else. We're ignoring the mystical or the transcendent. And, nothing exists unless you can measure it and validate it. But also you have this materialistic and selfish kind of aspect to it, especially when it combines with red. And when we start talking about the dynamics between the various memes, that can become much more apparent. So excessives, we don't mind polluting as long as we make money. We don't mind child labor. We're making money. We don't mind food standards being substandard. We're making money. We don't really care about the ecosystems. We can dominate and exploit employees it's all about making money, right?
So in none of these first three means you're talking about, Bruce, is there any feeling that one might have a responsibility for the neighbor or anybody else?
Well, certainly in a in yes, in tribes, yeah, you're responsible for, and you're connected to your tribe or your country in blue, and so there's certainly a responsibility for other people. When you're in a meme that's individualistic, there's less orientation toward responsibility for others than when you're in a meme that's oriented toward collective.
But so far you're just saying it's only a loyalty to your tribe. So for any other group, you wouldn't care at all about it.
No, not you wouldn't. And with a profit motive, you're going to have excesses of some sort of other. So, and prosperity comes through strategy, technology, competitiveness. So for me, this is a combination of really the dynamics of capitalism and the dynamics of science. So that's what the orange meme means. There are other things too, but those are the two key things that come to mind.
Well, it sounds like a recipe for inequality.
Well, yes, it is. It is because you know, you're being individualistic, and you know, if you're not able to make it, you know, that's your problem, right? So here again, this is the next, you know, the next level then emerges from that, and the next level then is green, which is collective, and it's more community oriented. Started about 150 years ago. Now that's not long ago. We're talking about 1800, 1850. You know, here again, this is inner peace, working with others, very caring in the dimensions of community. So there's much more of a feeling oriented to this. And there's a pushback around greed and dogma and divisiveness, and feelings of sensitivity and caring, and that supersede the rational co-rationality. And there's concern about resources and opportunities for equality among all. And there's a strong sense of reconciliation and consensus building. And that can become problematic, and we'll mention that. But you know, it's really a heart-centered, egalitarian kind of approach. So some of the issues, go ahead.
First appearance of altruism.
Yes. So here, you know, sensitive to issues such as ecosystems, global warming, underprivileged, nonviolence, diversity. You know, gay rights, prone to depression, suicide, first level, not likely to commit murder. Offer socialized democratic forms of government. Now, that each meme can be demonized by other memes, obviously. We'll talk about that, but let's look at the weaknesses. One of them is if they have all perspectives being equal, then, you know, where's the center? If everybody has their own reality, I mean, that's one of the challenges. But there's this creation of paralysis and inability to make decisions. You've probably been in meetings where everybody talks and nobody makes a decision. You come back the next week and no decisions have been made because you haven't come to a consensus. And that's kind of a green kind of thing. So they can become trapped as elitists and ignite and activate the blue to push back, or encouraging the red because they're kind of blind to other aspects of reality. And we'll see this in just a couple of minutes. We're almost there. Okay, so surprisingly enough, we're at the place of conversation here. So let's take a look at this. In the center, we have these memes now, purple, beige, purple, and then we have the red meme, you know, of the jungle and you know, striving to survive, being willing to fight, not necessarily wanting rules, being willing to fight against rules. And then we have and that's where the dictator is, you know, makes the rules, doesn't follow the rules. And then we have the blue, which is around religion and nationalism and ordered. And obviously, in coming into city states, I mean, when you have people living in cities of 10 million people, you've got to have structure. You've got to have laws. You've got to have systems in place that keep it all together. And that's what blue does. And then we have the orange meme, where we have this marketplace of possibilities and opportunities. We have science, we have technology, we have a rationalistic way of thinking. And then we have the blue meme, the green meme, which is more around feelings, is more around maybe a global kind of perspective, the human habitat, if you will. And so as you've been listening to this, you've probably started to sort out, you know, where you are, where other people might be, putting labels on the others of as you mentioned, Trump or liberals or conservatives or Republican Democrats. I prefer not to really use those terms in this conversation. Let whoever's listening to this, including us, kind of make our own interpretations, because it's not that simple. It's much more complex. This is very, very dynamic. We're just not blue. You know, we have some people who are very, very strong blue, but also are very strong orange. They might have a center of gravity in one or the other, but you know, an example would be someone who is a devout religious person, but they're very entrepreneurial, and they're after making money, right? So they would be in both strong blue and orange. So what I thought we might do is just open this up and look at some of these things and kind of have a conversation about how this might play out today in terms of our political climate, our cultural climate, not only domestically potentially, but also internationally. So who wants to pick something that would be kind of fall in one of these meme categories and have a conversation about it? Anybody game?
Well, let's say social safety net.
All right. So what meme would that be kind of primarily associated with?
Well, I would think green, you're more interested in, you know, the well-being of others. I mean, I guess it depends where you are. I mean, I guess if you are a person who's going to be poor and in need of the safety net, you might support that at other memes, but at least in the green level, at least people not in need of the safety net might support it for values reasons rather than self-interested reasons.
Yes. So okay, that's very good. And what would somebody in the orange meme view this as far as the safety net is concerned? What would their mentality be?
I think they would only support it if it was in their interest.
Okay. Any other observations, guys?
My observation is that actually in the past 50, 100, well, let's say 50 years, globally, there's been a huge technological phenomenon that we're living in, and that is a huge, huge change where you instantly know what's happened. The electronically, communication-wise, the globe is wired so that everything is known kind of real time. That's never happened before on the planet. So and you put all of that together, the number of individuals on the planet Earth that live in what they call, I forget the word, advanced nations. They've got 4 categories, is 90%. This has never happened in the history of the planet Earth. And it's happened in our lifetime. And the thing to keep in mind is that change is scary to human beings who have a need to be in control and know what to expect. And this is happening in every person on the planet. And it's happening, and then this, say, spiral dynamic structure is a way to organize the individuals that are dealing with it in different ways at different levels based on their experience. But basically, my observation is on the planet Earth in the last 50 years, the rug has been pulled out from under every individual on it. Huge changes are taking place. And this is out of awareness causing anxiety and change.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So would anyone like to take another issue and kind of run it through the spiral? So let me take one, and that's abortion. Abortion is, where would that be? That would be a blue meme, wouldn't it? That's primarily a religious imperative for certain religious groups. I don't think the Buddhists have a problem with abortion. I'm not sure, but certainly parts of the Christians have an abortion abhorrence to it. And I'm thinking that the orange meme doesn't really care much about abortion. You know, unless they own a clinic, an abortion clinic, and want to make money at it. You know, there is some aspect of individual rights in the orange meme around democracy and so forth. But it's the green meme, you know, that really is at play against the against abortion, banning of abortion, right? Now, the other thing that's interesting is that some memes will play off others. For instance, the orange meme might very well, from a political standpoint, support abortion, even though it doesn't necessarily fall within their value system, in order to gain political advantage, right? Does that make sense? Does that analysis make sense?
Yeah, to me.
And of course, the big right now in the news is the racial, the societal racial justice issue, and then the balance between law and order. So the societal racial justice is definitely a green. It's green and somewhat orange, right? But primarily green. And then the law and order is blue. So here we have the law and order people saying, you know, you got to crush the protesters and do something about the lawlessness. And then the Green is saying, you know, defund the police departments. So they're demonizing blue because of their perspective. And of course, the whole idea here is to have a balance, right? To have a balance all on up and down the spiral, and recognizing that at some level everybody's right. You can have law and order, and you can have social and racial justice. But it seems to me that people from the perspective of memes are really doing battle with each other because they're right, and there's no rightness to the other side.
Well, but I think too, I think underneath the racial justice topic would be policies that would benefit minorities, reparations, affirmative action, job training, safety net benefits, which would not be attractive, for example, to an orange, I would imagine, to an orange person who wouldn't benefit from any of that.
That's correct. So the orange is saying, don't raise my taxes. I don't want to be, you know, I'm individualistic. They want to make their own money. They shouldn't have you know, take money out of my pocket, right? I mean, that's the perspective from the orange side. But the Green comes back and says, yeah, but you got all these, you know, you got all this money, and so we're the wealthiest country in the world. Why can't we take take care of the least fortunate among us, right? And so the Green in that case is demonizing the orange, and the orange is saying, hey, you know, no. So it's all a matter of balance, is it? All a matter of dynamics. Jim, what are your thoughts about this? Is anything coming to mind?
Well, hate to be generalizing, but as far as I know, all of the rules have been made by men. Almost all of the spiritual practices have been made by men, and even abortion men didn't care about. And I look at what's happening in our government, the women are getting after it.
Absolutely, yes.
Very different spiral.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, they talk about, as you might recall earlier on when we talk about the building, the patriarchy in the blue meme. The blue meme is certainly where the ultimate of the patriarchy comes from. Now you have the patriarchy in the orange meme, and you know all you have to do is look at the Senate and look at all the old guys, mostly old white guys, right?
Yeah.
And you certainly have a patriarchy there, and in corporations, you know. So there's certainly some in the orange, both in corporations and government. So I think we all agree that having a greater participation of women in all aspects of governance and society with full and equal rights is something that's an imperative. And of course, that to some extent it should be an orange meme, but it also is definitely green as well.
Why would you say orange, Bruce?
Well, equal rights. I mean, our Constitution, all men are created equal. Whoops, what happened to women? You know, all men are created equal. Whoops, what happened to minorities? You know.
Well, but again, I mean, if an orange person is strategic Maybe I don't want to give women power. Maybe I don't want to give minorities power. I want white men to have the power. Why would I necessarily care about anybody else and their influence on society?
That's right. Could be.
I'll just throw something out there. Who created the criminal justice system?
God.
Men. I'm just saying men created it.
Right. Absolutely.
Hey, Bruce, part of my thought is, one was that Martin Luther King had the thing that, with that things move slowly, but the arc of the spiral of things go toward justice, which would to me mean moving toward the green. I actually see a yellow thing up here. I don't think we've talked about that.
Not on the scale.
But how do we, my question even is, does it bend toward justice? Does it move to the next level? If it does drop back, is inertia going to take it back up?
Well, if you look at it historically, yes. I mean, there's no guarantees, obviously. I mean, it's unlikely unless we end up with a nuclear war that we're all going to go back to the red meme and the entire planet is going to be red the way it was, 5,000 years ago. So we'd like to think that there's progress and there's emergence, and there's a huge amount of data that says that is absolutely the case. I mean, 100 years ago, we had famines, we had many people starving. That's not the case now. There's several books that have been written about all of the trends being in the macro side of things very positive. So, but you have nuclear war, or you have autonomous AI weapons that take over and kill everybody. I mean, there are all kinds of things, or a pandemic that wipes out 70% of the human race. Things are going to change a lot.
Well, I mean, one way to look at this that I would find kind of interesting is, find a way, for example, find an aspect of our culture that's real different from lots of other Western European cultures. Like, for example, as Jim says, the criminal justice system. I mean, restorative justice has been accepted much more broadly, as I understand it, in lots of Europe than our attitude toward incarceration. Now, maybe our attitudes toward the criminal justice system are beginning to change, but we have such a different approach currently to imprisoning people than much of the developed world. I just find that interesting to compare and try to understand.
Well, I think that's a good observation. I mean, when you look at it globally, you can see that Europe is much more green. They have more of a welfare state. They have at some level, a better social justice system. They've taken, and this is a value judgment on my part, but they've taken the best parts of the capitalistic system, and they've modified it at some level using the green kind of meme to create a greater equality, greater really spread of well-being, if you will, throughout the citizenship.
Yeah, but it seems to me, I mean, maybe this gets beyond our conversation, but it seems to me our philosophy, for example, regarding imprisonment is ineffective even on its own terms. I mean, it destroys families, it destroys lives, it costs a lot of money. It's just hard to understand, other than the self-interested industries who are benefiting from it, what the purpose is of that system, and who
Well,
who
be
who
aware
are-
that yeah, the blue comes from the chaos of the red. So when you have people operating in the red who are violent, who are not operating according to the any kind of laws, then the blue will take over, right? And what's happened is the blue took over with the hard on crime and so forth. And now the orange has come in and said, well, let's go ahead and monetize this. And so now you have corporations running prisons, right?
And yet
And which,
the underlying deal there is retribution. You know, you're an evildoer. You're going to go. We're going to slap you in prison for however many years. And so
yes, and that's definitely a blue meme. And what would the green meme say about the incarceration in prison? So my sense is that somebody who's totally wackadoodle green would say, well, we need to release all the prisoners. Well, that's obviously nonsense. We can't do that. There has to be a balance, right? It's like the people saying, well, we need to defund the police department. Well, that's ridiculous,
Well, I mean, a related sort of point would be what should people do in jail? Should they learn a skill in jail? Should they just have fights and sex in jail? What should the purpose of jail be? And as I understand it, you know more than I do, Bruce. I mean, there are very few job training programs in prison today, and these people get out of prison damaged and with no job skills.
Well, that's true, and the criminal justice system throughout the country has a huge number of problems. Not only with the courts as well as the prisons. There's no question about it. So one thing I thought it would be interesting is to look on the right side here, and look at some of the things that I've written out here around the Bill of Rights: freedom of the press, no law establishing religion, equal rights. You take about the law establishing religion, for instance. What's happened is that we have and I'm going to talk about the current administration. We have a very orange president who has zero green, right? Is anti-green, who is co-opting the blue in from a political standpoint, and allowing them to theocratize the government to some extent. Now, it hasn't been very successful at this point, but prayer in schools, various other kinds of encroachment on the secular by the religion is certainly present, even when the Bill of Rights says there should be no law establishing religion, and there have been a lot of interpretations. And so, I think some of these Bill of Rights right now are being challenged for political purposes. And it's amazing to me when I wrote this how, the Bill of Rights have been around since the founding of the country, and we're still fighting over them. The freedom of the press, demonizing the press. And obviously the right to bear arms. That's a very, very blue kind of value system, but it's also orange. It's part of the Bill of Rights. So, Carl, any observations that you can make at this point around all this stuff?
No, again, just taking it to the individual level, it seems to me that I jump back and forth depending on my self-interest. meaning that,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I can be, hey, let's completely wipe them out, to no, hey, we have to be kind to everybody.
Right. Well, I think the key here is to recognize that there's value in every one of these, that you cannot dismiss any of them and just eliminate them. There's a value to orange, to blue, to red. They all play a role, and to green. They all play a role in the health, if you will, of society. And you can look at it from an individual standpoint. I mean, my in terms of my own personal views and how I've changed, I moved from, I did not have much blue. I wasn't born into a deeply blue family, not highly patriotic. I mean, they were good citizens, but that was sort of like just the way it was. And there was some church, but there was not a sort of an indoctrination into into a religious persuasion. But I became very, very oriented toward the orange, and I've seen myself move toward green over the last 10 years. And here I'm talking about 15 years. So I'm 78, so we're from 58 to 78. For the last 20 years I've moved. Memes for individuals move very slowly. I mean, you don't leap. First of all, you don't leap them. They have to transcend and include. You don't go from red to green, right? Or from blue to green. You have to go through all of them. That's the model, if you will. So just for grins, before we get into orange, where do you think you might be? Where's your center of gravity, Phil? Are you with us?
Yeah, it's hard to say what day you're asking me.
Uh-huh.
Today.
Generally it's green, but there are mornings when I wake up and just want to kill all the motherfuckers.
Right, but from what meme perspective are you wanting to do that?
Well, from the red, clearly.
Well, you can be violent in any of these memes.
Yeah, you can.
So it's not mere,
A number of them, but the center of your central gravity of your thinking generally rests at one level, and I'd say that for most of us in this group, we rest in the green. Certainly.
Yes, and some more than others. I mean, I'm certainly very much an orange guy still. And I have an appreciation for the blue and the value of the blue. I'm certainly a good citizen. I'm a patriot. And so, yeah. So I don't know how about you, Joe? Where are you? Are you so open-minded your brains are running out, or do you have a particular approach?
I think well, in my head, I'm orange, and but I think I'm all over the map, basically, in fact. I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking, we all, if you don't have any money and you don't have any food and you don't have any place to live, you're an invasion meme.
That's right.
It's just automatic. That's survival stuff. This whole thing is based on survival, and that's the spiral. And it also is based on cooperation. The more we cooperate and work and put our shoulder to the wheel for the common good, the better it is for everyone. So anyway, all that's running through my head. And but I think I'm the one that's blue and orange. Says you got to have rules or nothing works. And the other is you got to contribute or nothing works. And then in a lot of the literature I've read, they talk about uh, in growing through a meme over decades.
Right.
You go from low orange to mid orange to upper orange
Mm-hmm.
to low green. And the other thing to keep in mind is depending on external circumstances, you revert to the previous mean, the most familiar, the most comfortable, the most in control whenever things get out of your control. But
Yes, when fear comes into play.
I got strong law and order, and I got strong support yourself and make a contribution, and the better you get at it, the better things are
Right.
for you and everybody else.
Mm-hmm. So this is great. In the interest of time, what I like to do is to go to the next slide and talk about.
I'll report.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm a green with the aspirations of yellow.
All right. All right. So let's talk about yellow. That's good. So yellow is this, what they call second tier. And I'm going to read what Carl Graves says. What I'm proposing is the psychology of the mature human being is unfolding, emerging, oscillating, spiraling process marked by progressive subordination of older, lower order behavioral systems to newer, higher order systems as man's existential problems change. And they talk about the yellow meme here. I'm going to read this. That's 50 years ago, but let me say, just to give you a perspective, the figures I've seen is that they're probably about less than 5%, maybe even less than 3% of people at the yellowy level. And there are no societies at the yellowy level on the planet at this point. But at some point in time, there was those societies at the green or orange level, right? So this is a possibility. So seeing life as natural hierarchy and systems and forms, appreciating the spiral, appreciating the various levels, the magnificence of existence is valued over material possessions. Spontaneity and functionality is the highest priority. What works? What really works is one of the operating principles of somebody who's leading, let's say, at a yellow level. And with a recognition that differences can be integrated, that there's an understanding that there is always chaos and change, and that they're natural. So I think it's a much more of a relaxed kind of mentality, because you see the entire picture, and you see the positive and the negatives of each of the meme levels. And so you're not demonizing the memes, and you're not exalting each meme beyond the other memes at some level. So is that, Jim, is that what you're kind of envisioning as your yellow level aspiration?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'm getting pretty old. And as I look out, and I read the New York Times and the Washington Post every day, or scan it, and I watch these bright, mixed race, mixed whatever people on TV. And I say, we're gonna get there, regardless of us old farts who live too long, because I see a lot of leadership out there. And it's coming from the people who are not like us.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm somewhat optimistic. You know, I even read the Chronicle today where they're saying the oil industry is absolutely toast. You know, Exxon is out of this, you know, is out. Uh, you know, Shell, Exxon, all the biggies have lost 50% of their value. That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the
The right
changes.
people are looking at TikTok, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I feel like I'm just kind of watching the world go by, and like Joe, I think the place that we can make a difference is those boys in high school. I think,
Yeah, yeah.
and they're bright as hell. I mean, you know, they're absorbing everything.
Absolutely. So why don't we do this? Let's wrap this up, and I'm going to take this off shared screen so that
I got one more other point. I had a piece
yeah,
of red in
you
me
can
when I was doing triathlons,
Mhm.
but I finally figured out I have no competition, so I've relaxed about the red part of me.
You cross the finish line first if you're the only player.
There's one guy in Pasadena in the world that's doing triathlons at my age. So, so I've kind of lost my competitiveness about that.
Well, but you can you can raise the bar, Jim, for the.
Well, I do have a lot of people come up to me after a triathlon who see my age, which is on the back of my knee, and they say that you're really an inspiration. That you know, for me to continue to work out, and
Yeah.
So I'll take that.
Absolutely. So any more any other observations about the spiral before we close on spiral, and then I'll stop the recording.
Stop.
Carl?
Well, a piece that was just coming to my mind is again that thing going back into bending of history. If you look at, let's say, the advent of somebody like Hitler, that I mean, it's just destroying the world and lives and people like that. That our parents basically grew up in that era. And now we're faced with, okay, we're still on live, or can we mention a political event?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Right. Okay. Well, anyway, you have the issue of what if Trump wins here? Okay. Well, in my opinion, then you've got the ability, you have the core of our democracy, of a lot of our institutions, that he's going to make the rules. He's not going to basically follow things that have, to me, have led to stability. So where does you look in that yellow where somebody understands that chaos and moving back and forth is natural. So I want to get that energy myself to realize that, again, that history is bending forward, that my children and grandchildren are going to, have a moving forward of history.
Absolutely. And just one observation, a lot of people say the world is so screwed up now. If you were sitting in Poland in 1939, comparing it to today, the perspective is just totally different.
Yes.
In the 20th century, fellow human beings killed over 100 million people died from other people's hands. And even in the first 20 years to 1920, there were millions and millions of people who died, and we have not had that so far. So we might have to look at progress on a century by century perspective, but it seems to be, we seem to be making progress. So I'm going to thank you guys for doing this, and I'm going to shut the recording down, and then we'll